Hello, testing. Okay, great. Hello, everyone. Let's get back to our session. I'm Bing Chen. I'm an associate dean and chair professor with the Faculty of Engineering and Applied Science at Myanmar University. It's really my pleasure and honor to be here with you, especially as a new fellow, and also happily serving on this organizing committee. Besides, I've been asked to pay my membership fee right away when I receive my award letter. Okay, but that's one of the a few membership fees I allowed to pay. Yeah. Okay, today I'm happy to hear to moderate this session. I should also thank Dr. Wei Chiu. Actually, he was the one putting together our speaker and this session, given his background in shipbuilding, etc., ocean engineering. So I think in the past sessions, we already discussed a lot about the challenges, opportunities associated with the blue economy, and also some very innovative solutions. This session, let's change a topic, talking about collaboration and how we could better collaborate across sectors, cross disciplines, cross organizations, and at a local, national, even international level, and to support and grow our blue economy. So I think we are lucky to have excellent lineup of speakers today for this session, and they are going to share their opinion and also their successful stories with us. So first, let me introduce our three speakers all together, and then each of them give a talk, and then we leave the question and at the very end if we have time. Okay, our first speaker is Ms. Susan Hunt. Susan is the Chief Technology Officer of Canada's Ocean Supercluster. As a founding member of the organization's senior management team, she currently manages over 360 million portfolios of activities spanning across ocean industries and related to collaborative technology development and commercialization focused programs, as well as IP and data management. Prior to the Ocean Supercluster, Susan managed collaborative research programs for Canada's offshore oil and gas sector. She was an ocean he was an ocean technology company executives and also helped establish the MATEX, very famous Canadian network centers of excellence in Newfoundland and Labrador. She also spent 6 years working in the U.S. ocean sector as a development manager and also naval architect. Susan has a Bachelor of Naval Architecture and Ocean Engineering degree from Myanmar University and a Master of Science in Information Systems and an MBA from University of Washington. Susan is going to talk about the human supercluster and also discuss how collaborate ocean innovation could support more reliable and digital and sustainable inclusive economy. Our second speaker is Dr. David Murin. Dave is the Director General of the Ocean, Coastal, and the River Engineering Research Centers of National Research Council of Canada. Previously, he served as a Director of Research and Development at NRC's Ottawa facility, where he was responsible for the leadership of research scientists, engineers, and technologies who carry out R&D in the areas of naval architecture, ocean engineering, coastal engineering, water resource management, and marine safety. Before joining the NRC, Dave was the Operations Director Canada for Wood Group Canada and also the Executive Director of the Center for Arctic Resources Management. Dave holds undergrad, master's, and doctorate degrees in ocean and naval architecture at Myanmar University, where she also works as a visiting assistant professor. David's going to talk about NRC's strategies and priorities on how to mobilize ocean research and collaboration for the changing environments and especially support blue ocean economy, along with some very successful stories or examples to share. Our last speaker of this session is Dr. Freeman Ralph. Freeman brings his role as a Sea Corps Vice President, Oceans and Energy, with a strong record of initiating, negotiating, and managing large-scale R&D projects, and addressing technical challenges from both operations and research perspective. Throughout his 20 years with Sea Corps, Dr. Ralph has led a team of seasoned STEM professionals in investigating challenges to environmentally responsible, sustainable, and cost-efficient operations in the Arctic regions. He has worked extensively on ice loads and ice management for developments of Canada's East Coast and several Arctic regions under consideration for oil and gas exploration and development. As a three-time graduate of Memorial University, Freeman holds undergrad, master's, and doctoral degrees in ocean and naval architecture engineering. So I'm quite proud of here, 3 our speakers, all our alumni of Faculty of Engineering and Memorial. Okay, so that's the very brief introduction of our speakers. Now I think I can invite Susan. The floor is yours. Give our talk.
Great. Good afternoon, everybody. I am delighted to be here today. My name is Susan Hunt, and I'm CTO of Canada's Ocean Supercluster. The Ocean Supercluster is, above all, a collaborative, industry-led, multi-sectoral initiative that aims at accelerating the commercialization of ocean solutions by Canadian companies. And we are advancing Canada's ocean innovation ecosystem in a sustainable, digital, and inclusive way. So everything that we do, where we came from, how we were conceived, is based on a mindset of collaboration. So delighted to be on a panel with everyone here today, and I don't think I will run out of things to talk about. But to quickly familiarize everybody, because I know some of you may not have heard of who we are and what we're about, I have a short video that I'll play.
Largely unexplored and not well understood, our ocean is a powerful, resilient, and mighty resource. On the front line in the fight against climate change, outpacing the growth of the broader economy, creating new companies and jobs, and accelerating growth that is digital, sustainable, and inclusive. Helping communities, both coastal and inland, and all Canadians to build a strong, self-sustaining future. Canada is leading the way as an ocean nation. In a world where there is growing demand for sustainable protein, our ocean helps feed the planet. Where 90% of shipping is marine, our ocean moves the goods we need. As we consider how to power the world, our ocean will help make the transition to green energy possible. And as the environment is pushed to absorb increasing amounts of carbon, our ocean is home to the largest carbon sink. There is a race against time to solve significant ocean challenges, and it's Canadian innovators who are delivering solutions for a better world and a brighter future. This is Canada's time to lead. Indigenous culture tells us that ocean is life, where every second breath we take is from the ocean, sustaining us and providing for us, worthy of respect and consideration, and with an eagle's view for generations to come. Bringing Indigenous knowledge and Western science together, building capabilities, partnerships, and opportunity. Canada's Ocean Supercluster is a pan-Canadian, industry-led network that is changing the way ocean business is done. With hundreds of members from coast to coast to coast, the Ocean Supercluster is built on collaboration across different sectors and regions, delivering transformational projects that not only tackle big challenges, but also create big opportunity. Startups, scale-ups, and established companies are working together with the research community, government, incubators, and regional hubs and investors. Together, they are developing hundreds of new made-in-Canada ocean products, processes, and services that help us access better data, going deeper and further to explore our ocean, monitor movement and health of fish and other species in our waters, transition to greener fuels and electrification of vessels, develop our vast bioresources and sustainable protein alternatives, support increasingly digital defense activity with the newest ocean technologies, and stay connected to offshore industry from anywhere and reduce risk to workers through remote operations. The Ocean Supercluster is building an innovation ecosystem that is robust and diverse to help us fully realize the benefits of Canada's ocean opportunity. Delivering mentorship, skills development, networking, and internships to increase the participation of Indigenous peoples, women, youth, and underrepresented groups in ocean, and making this the best place to start and grow an ocean company. The development of Canada's blue economy is one of the most important opportunities of our time for a better world and a brighter future. As an ocean nation, this is our time.
So that was a little bit about us and who we are. We have not been around for that long. We have been built up from an idea just a couple of years ago to an initiative that's now executing over $360 million of activity through 70 different projects right across the country. And these projects are being conducted collaboratively in every single instance. They are entirely consortium-based projects, private sector partners, including large companies, small to medium-sized businesses, startups, in partnership with public sector institutions, research institutions, government departments, students. It is a substantial initiative with projects spanning many sectors, including fisheries, ocean energy, aquaculture, and transportation. And in fact, luckily enough, the previous panel that was just up, all three companies that were participating, including GIT, CAE, and Glass Ocean, are either leading or are participating in some way or another on an ocean supercluster project. So that felt relevant. It was great to see them up here and to be talking about them because they're certainly rock stars. It's also nice to see Jim and Chris, who are founding members, founding thought leaders in the initiative, here in the audience today as well. And so the Ocean Supercluster was set up to capitalize on the massive opportunity that exists in the global ocean economy. And we're now at the point where this opportunity is truly being realized, with over 18,000 jobs and $4.3 billion of economic value added that will be generated over the next few years, and have fortunately just been renewed by the federal government for another 6-year mandate, which we're very excited about. And so I guess, but really, like, what does that have to do with this panel today? I'm sure is what you're thinking. And really, collaboration was at the heart of everything that happened with the Ocean Supercluster. It was the reason why we were set up. It was the common denominator for all the project's successes. And it is also the source of the more diversified, more accelerated, and more augmented economic impacts that we're seeing coming out of the projects and out of the initiative in general. It truly is, a key ingredient in everything that we do. And one of the principles that's very important to us is the concept of prioritizing shared ocean challenges and resolving them through collaborative activity, consortiums of players with diversified perspectives, diversified skills and strengths that are working together to deliver a greater impact and deliver greater outcomes than otherwise what would be possible. And this is really based in a common shared interest common interest in ocean challenges in terms of automation, sustainability, productivity. These are priorities that many different ocean sectors and many different ocean economic participants share. I mean, another really important point to make, I guess, around the OSC is the fact that it was led by industry. So there were hundreds of companies right across the country that weren't forced to do this. They weren't mandated to do this. They chose to do this. They decided that working together with other companies and other public sector partners was the right way to do business. It was the faster way to do business. It was the more profitable way to do business. And I really think is a bit of a, a working example and to a certain extent, even a prototype of what the future of Canada's blue economy can look like. And because of this, the program is now becoming a model for other countries. I know Bing asked me to talk a little bit about some of the international work. We are getting an incredible amount of international interest from other countries, examining and interrogating us, not in a way that was much different from the way that we were looking at other companies when we were setting up our collaborative initiative. But it's certainly nice to be able to actually share back and give back to some of the Norway in particular and some of the countries that we examine their collaborative concepts. And really see an overarching collaborative model as a core tenet for project success. So I know I only have another minute. So in my last minute, I know I'm in a room that is full of engineers, or most of you I think are engineers, and I'm an engineer as well. So I was absolutely compelled to put a graphic matrix up on the screen just to make sure everybody knew where they were. But to give you a bit of a perspective on what I mean by the alignment with collaborative behavior with how that can support and sustain the future of the blue economy, what is showing on this picture is all of the investments that were made into the ocean supercluster and where they went from the perspective of shared ocean challenges. And so you see on the left-hand side there are the key ocean sectors that were driving and pulling the solutions. So they were pulling the products and services and the technologies that were developed. And then across the top, you have 5 key ocean challenges that all of the activity could fall underneath in terms of the problems that they were solving through the commercialization of their products. And with the green shading really just being a bit of an emphasis on where most of the dollars and most of the activity were, with the dark green being, above the $50 million level. So you can really start to get a sense about what it means to have a collaborative ocean economy and what types of results and what types of problems are being addressed and being resolved through that kind of activity. And so I just thought I'd bring that down to earth a little bit in terms of what that actually means and what does it look like in reality, an ocean economy working together to solve shared ocean challenges. That's the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much. Excellent talk and huge opportunities there, obviously. But then our next speaker is Dr. Devin Uri. Our view from the government perspective. Yep.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm really happy to be here just to speak a little bit about what the NRC is doing on the, I guess, the blue economy side of things, but also to touch on how we can collaborate. I'll quickly touch on NRC really quickly, in case you're not familiar. So we're basically a network of researchers and facilities in a lot of ways. About 4,000 people across the country. About half of those are researchers, and technical staff. We operate many facilities around the country, including here in Halifax. We have a budget of about $1 billion, and we do about 1,600 R&D collaborations a year, and we work with about 8,000 SMEs. So just this slide, it probably needs a bit of unpacking, but I won't spend too much time on it. I just really wanted to show where we could possibly situate NRC kind of in in the innovation landscape. We basically fit in between the intersection of industry, university, and the public sector. And we do recognize that I guess the greatest outcomes come from collaboration. So that's where we try to do a lot of our work. So we've focused a number of, I guess, blue economy activities really aligned on helping Canada's blue economy grow. And we've grouped them into 4 main areas. I won't get into all the details on each one because I only have 7 minutes. So the first one is coastal resilience. And so that's where we think about flooding, flood forecasting, nature-based solutions, that sort of thing, mitigation of climate change on coastal infrastructure. The next one is intelligent marine assets. So that's where we do a lot of performance evaluation on ships and offshore structures and that sort of thing. Autonomous assets in harsh environments. Then outside of engineering and probably more towards the biological side of things, we do pollution remediation and bioassets. Don't do those inside my research center, but pollution remediation is really around fate and transport of microplastics. That is something that we do. And bioassets is really around algae and seaweed and that sort of thing, looking at the elements living in the water. So we've been studying ice and harsh environments for a long time. Our research center is world leaders in the area, and we enjoy a strong international reputation. We have a lot of experience in ice in particular, and we work at all scales. So we work at model scale, we work at in the field, we do full scale work, and we also do numerical and AI work. We're very engaged in international committees and panels and working groups, and we have some tremendous assets. Really, they're national assets in a lot of ways, and you can see some of the pictures that are shown there. We could dedicate a lot of time to each one, but up top there are the coastal engineering facilities we have in Ottawa, and then along the bottom there are the facilities in St. John's, including our famous ice tank. And we're also digital, so we try to model a lot of everything we do physically. We try to model it numerically as well. And so that comes from either traditional physics-based modeling all the way up through AI and machine learning and that sort of thing. But we are here to talk about collaboration. So I just wanted to touch on one project as an example, and then talk about some ways that that we collaborate with different sectors. So the first one is on enabling coastal flood mitigation. And so this is just an example project, but what it was it's a project we developed probably 3 years ago with NRCan, and we're looking at developing new regional data sets for flood forecasting and hazard data sets and best practices and guidance for assessing coastal flood risk. And the way we did it was through a number of studies. We had field sites set up on all 3 coasts. And we involved a number of communities as well. And so if you see the list of collaborators, it's a good example of how we've touched on other federal departments. You can see D&D, NRCan is in there. We also looked at the provincial side of things because a lot of this is regulated at the provincial level. We worked with First Nations communities. You can see Tuktoyaktuk and various other First Nations. We also worked with private nonprofit and also various universities. So this was a big project, but it's a really good example of the kind of stuff that we can do collaboratively. It's in the final year of the project, but we're already starting to see a lot of the fruits of the work. So we have new regional storm, surge, and tsunami data sets, and we also have an improved understanding of the risk in a lot of these communities. And we've drafted new national guidelines for coastal flood hazard assessment, and that's going to be integrated into federal floodplain mapping guidelines. So now just a couple of slides on how we can work together. So basically, we achieve the NRC's goals through 3 different mechanisms. One is we advance scientific knowledge. Secondly, we support government policies. And thirdly, we support business innovation. So I'll just touch on the different ways that we do that now. First, in terms of advancing science, that's really a lot of work that we do in collaboration with universities. So we've spent a lot of time over the last probably 3 or 4 years trying to work on our relationship with academia and build those relationships. So we're also involved in a number of consortia with academics, and we've signed MOUs with various institutes across the country. We also dramatically increased the number of students that we have at our facilities. I know my facility in particular, we went from having maybe 0 students 5 years ago to 35 to 40 a year now. We've really been working on that. It's great to see students around to help support our research. But the other thing we've been doing is we have this new thing called the Collaboration Center. So this was a concerted effort from the NRC a couple of years ago to look at kind of co-locating researchers and academic researchers and NRC researchers together to work on common problems. And you can see some of the sites that are listed there. And one of the ones that I've been working on has been the one with Memorial University. So our building in St. John's, it sits on Memorial's campus, and a lot of our researchers have been doing work for a long time together. And as you can see, a lot of our graduates continue to work in the industry. So in 2019, we opened what we call the Carlick Collaboration Center, and that's focusing on ocean engineering in particular, and really on bringing researchers together again. For those of you that don't know, the Carlick, that was a sailing ship captained by Bob Bartlett from Newfoundland that was intended for the Arctic, where it became trapped in ice and sank very early on in the journey. And so the Carlick for us is kind of a symbol of the, I guess, the challenges associated with operating in harsh climates and the innovation needed from researchers, Canada's top research in that area. So the other way we support or we achieve our goals is through government policy objectives and supporting those. So we do that by working with other government departments on their mandates. So we have very close relationships with the Coast Guard, Transport Canada, D&D, the Royal Canadian Navy, Environment and Climate Change Canada, NRCan, various provinces and territories. And we are an essential link in helping them achieve their mandates. Finally, we work closely with SMEs as well. So about 50% of our projects are with SMEs in Canada. And so they range from, I guess they can go from early stage work to prototyping work, and we help advance those designs. And we do it through a variety of ways. We can work on supercluster projects together. We have some projects where we've done that together. We have various fee reduction programs, so SMEs can come to us and use our facilities at reduced rates. There's also something called a certificate program through IRAP, which is part of the NRC, which you may have heard of. And then there's also various other ways that we can work together once we connect. So what I really wanted to do was just kind of put that out there and emphasize that collaboration is something that we've been really working on over the last number of years. And if any of your research aligns with, or any of your innovations, I should say, align with any of the expertise at my research center or even across NRC, I'd be really happy to hear from everybody. Thank you.
I really enjoy, especially the examples, the collaborative space. Our engineering students really benefit from that, including a few from my lab, frankly. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Dr. Freeman Ralph, talking about from industry perspective, equal. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, excuse me while the slides are loading up. So representing CCOR, and for those of you who don't know, CCOR is a commercially, or I like to use the term commercially applied research and technology company. We're situated in St. John's. Oh, move a little closer. Oh, there we go. Situated in St. John's. We do have offices as well in Ottawa. We're a 100-person company. And we do work in the oceans, on land, geotechnical team, as well as in space. So I thought a lot about what I could talk about here today, and I decided to kind of keep it a little focused on industry collaboration, but also looking at challenges as it relates to the oceans, as it relates to energy development, and also climate change. All of us have seen this slide in many forms or any different reflection points throughout the day. Excuse me. But when it comes to collaboration, I kind of highlighted the broad opportunity that exists when it comes to the different industries that are represented in Canada. And it's quite incredible, actually, just to reflect a little bit on this list. And with 7 minutes, I couldn't at this point. So at the end of the day, I've just kind of looked at some oceans. I'll call it development observations, and I've looked at energy in the next slide. And I love the reflection point this morning, where some, I think it might have been Sue, I'm not sure, but commented that we know more about space than we do about our oceans. And we know that because we do quite a bit of work in the space industry. Part of, and when it comes to understanding the oceans, one of the observations I've made is we're pretty good, or we're okay with casting something, but we're not so good at forecasting something. And fisheries is one of those examples. If there's fisher people in the room, we know things happen, we know things cycle, but if we could only pinpoint the when, things could be quite different. I've colored data, and I've often said in different forms, cash to business is like data to science and engineering and knowledge and insight. And you got to have data. You got to have good data. It's not just about any data. It's about having the right data. And if you've got the right data, then you've got a basis for what I've referred to here as driven solutions. When it comes to collaboration, the word I've highlighted there is seamless. So there's a lot of companies going to develop different instruments. I love the initiative, and I forget the name. No, it's not going to come to me. The integrated module that's been developed at Cove, where different groups can bring in different sensors. Belamaris, thank you. That's an opportunity, not even just to an individual group to test their piece of equipment, but to actually bring that data together into somewhat of a networked setting. Even if, excuse me, even if you're not drawing a conclusion from it, to actually pilot how multiple streams of data are being centralized and how that data can be used and disseminated. I like to think of it as like a plug and play, and I think that's a brand was used, but plug and play from an operational perspective. The next one is, and so at the end of the day, the value of data, it's clear: safety, reduced cost, efficiency, emissions. All those are things that that we can get better at as we learn something, as we glean more insight, etc. I want to make a couple of comments on machine learning and AI. People talk about it a lot. They get excited about it. The tools are there. The computer technology is at a place where we can process so much data in such a short period of time. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the quantity and if we don't have the quality, and from my perspective now, I'm thinking about the offshore world where we're trying to understand and characterize the environment and make decisions that influence operations. If you don't have good data, you don't have the right amount of the data, if it's, you can end up with consequences as opposed to opportunity. Final thing that I would say in this particular one, in terms of observations on machine learning, is enter this room. Let's not ever forget the importance of the science and the engineering. I've had it said where individuals say, just give me the data. We don't need the engineering. The machine learning tools, it'll do us for us. If we put piles of data in, the machine learning algorithms will tell us which ones aren't important. No, maybe, but let's not compromise on our engineering integrity, because there's points in time when we just don't know, and you need to rely on that, that insight. So we need the right people driving the innovation, the implementation, and the collaboration is a summary point with that. I just wanted to reflect a little bit on industry-based collaboration and the influence on, I'll call it development, and the influence of climate. And this is a study that we've been working on multiple studies actually. And the interesting thing about our region is icebergs exist, or ice exists, and it influences operations. What does it influence? The design of the facility, requirements in terms of operating in that region, downtime-based decisions, in other words, how you respond to a piece of ice that may be threatening and whether you leave location or not, the risks to subsea infrastructure, export gas, and we talk a lot about transition or energy transition. That's going to be an LNG base and other fuels as well. And all those influence the economics. What's interesting here is the multi-industry collaboration that's developing amongst the not just the oil and gas, but the renewables and the energy transition groups, and all of them are represented in real pictures that I've shown here, and reference was made to Beta Node earlier. So I thought I would just share a couple of points, and I'll go through these pretty quickly. How is the ice regime changing in our world, and what does it actually start to mean? And coming back to data and decisions. So 15, 20 years ago, I would have used the blue dots if I was to frame up some model where I had to model iceberg geometry. And so what we're seeing here in this graph is the drafts are much less than we would have designed for them. That influences seabed risk because less of them are making contact with the seabed. We look at just the size, and we look at data going back into, say, the 80s and prior to the 90s. We can start to see here that the sizes of the ice features are now less than what they were. So it means they're melting. And I'm not going to make conclusions. I'm just going to leave these observations with you. If I look at the length again, and in this audience, I can throw a distribution up. Otherwise, I would get my knuckles wrapped. But what you can basically see, I apologize for the font, but that's the problem with engineers is they don't often put things on graphs that you can read. And I didn't get a chance to do this myself. But anyway, but you can see you pick a probability level and you come across, you can actually see how that length distribution is significantly less than we would have used 15 years ago. There is a lot of variability in terms of the occurrence of ice. It's up and down, but in recent years, we're noticing there's more years with nothing. So years with no icebergs, zero on the East Coast. So what does that mean? We've also went and looked at some trajectories. And in the past, there was a study, if I look here, this was 7 years, going back into the 80s, 44 groundings over 7 years. What we did here was look at tracks of icebergs. If a track stopped in the record and it basically didn't move for 24 hours, most likely it's sitting on the seabed, and so it's grounded. So we record the groundings. This is a piece of work by Bank in 1989. So we got 6.3 groundings a year. So that influenced the design. Last 20 years, we've looked at the data. Actually, if I go back one, we got 1,174 tracks. Over the last 20 years, we've looked at 1,500 tracks. And what we've seen here is we've got 21 over the course of 22 years. Now we're less that it's not 6.5 or north of 6. It's now 1 or less than 1. So we're almost seeing an order of magnitude change in the risk associated with seabed development. That's significant. And this is what that looks like on a chart, going back to the early 80s relative to what we see now. What does it say? There's evidence for a change in the regime, fewer icebergs, smaller icebergs, changes in geometry, likely an ongoing trend. But then question that you have to ask is, if I'm going to reduce the loads, if there's less downtime, less risk, do I actually have enough data? How much data do I need? There's still uncertainty associated with it. And from an oil and gas perspective, and relating it back to an engineering challenge, industry could say, should I wait a little bit? Because there's big savings if I can reduce that risk. So back to the collaborative bit and the engineering challenges and stuff that we face, because engineers make decisions. Science gives us the information data. Us as engineers, we got to make some decisions. And the collaborative piece in that is the important one. So importance of collaboration, absolutely. Multiple industry sectors, industry, fisheries. This data that I'm looking at, fisheries have data. Marine transportation have data. The question is, how do we get all that data into the right space so that we can all learn something from each other's different knowledge? some of the industry groups are competitive. We've got to bring those barriers down. I know that from working with the oil and gas clients. In this particular case, though, we actually have good collaboration happening amongst them. We have a project now where we've got all industry players into the one called Subsea Ice Interaction Barriers to Energy Development. Collaboration amongst universities and institutes. Yeah, we sometimes get competitive too. We like to get credit for publishing or being first author on a publication. Legacy is associated with it. Actually, in fact, NSERC funding is competitive if you're not seen. So there's these elements that tend to exist. So how do we remove some of those barriers so that we can actually collaborate? Government departments and government industry. So my summary is data, data, data. You got to have it. We got to have more of it. We're going to get it in real time. We got to be able to process it so we can glean decisions. There's the analytics side comes out, leads to knowledge, insights, and decisions. But at the end of the day, moving forward, collaboration is key. I think I went more than 7 minutes, but Dave was a little bit under, so.
Thank you very much. John, I'm not sure if you use our time for question or you want to put all the questions together. This session or those session. Okay, great. So we have the luxury of the questions. So the floor is open for questions from the audience, and also I think we have the online people sitting there. So if there's any questions, please just speak out. Any questions from the floor? Yes, please, Jim.
Biggest thing is, excuse me, they're still calving, and the rates of calving are still quite high. If you don't have a good insulation layer in your cooler, then your bottle of water is likely to melt, and we don't see the same ice extent up off the coast of Labrador. So a lot of the ice is actually melting as it comes down the coast because that cooling medium is less. It's one of the reasons.
That's actually, that was my question too. Yeah. Any other questions? One more. The last chance. Any questions from the online platform? No? Okay. Probably I'll take the last chance. I would like to ask Susan, the supercluster, that's huge, right? Very successful. You look at the number of projects, etc. And what do you think that based on the past few years, what's the number one challenge talking about the collaborative projects? Yes.
Yeah, I guess if you're to, there's more than one challenge,
Oh,
but
sure.
maybe overall it's probably the ones that never got started. You know, that the ones that never got started that could have gotten started, you know, what might have been missed and why that was, and trying to understand that the problems and the challenges associated with those ones. You know, it so much sort of relies on understanding, well, pitching your idea in a way that's clear enough that people understand what you're looking for, but not so sort of narrow enough that you're precluding people from actually collaborating with you. So that sort of balance, and some companies and some people are good at that and some people are not. And then on the flip side of it, you know, coming into a conversation ready to think about collaborating. So having that open mindset, I'd say overall, that's probably the biggest challenge is those first couple of conversations, because once you strike and land on something, then if you've got something, then business is going to take over and that's going to develop and that's going to turn into something. But, you know, how many of those sort of passing in the night did you miss from just not having that right sort of balance of mindset when you're coming into a conversation?
Very much for the tip.
Fortunately, we have to keep moving, so
Okay.
Thank you, Bing, and the panel.
Okay, so this brings us to our last session of the day, which is actually listed as an Oceanside chat and only for would take too long, I think it would be fabulous to go down to the boardwalk and sit by the ocean and have this chat. But nonetheless, I want to introduce Dr. Chris Huskelson. Chris is a pioneer in the energy sector in Canada and internationally. During his appointment as the president and CEO of Emera Inc., the company more than doubled its assets to over $9 billion. Under his leadership, Emera expanded its operations and services and infrastructure in the northeastern U.S., Atlantic Canada, St. Lucia, Grand Bahama, and Barbados. Chris has led capital and service-based initiatives such as pump storage hydroelectric facilities, natural gas pipelines, gas-fired power plants, energy services companies, renewable tidal energy companies. He was involved in the Maritime Link, bringing clean energy to Nova Scotia, and we could go on. And despite all of that, I met Chris in a bit of a different context while he was still at Emera, but Chris was a thought leader and founding supporter of the Emera Idea Hub, which you've heard from two of the companies. CAE and GIT were both, well, CAE still is, but GIT was a former member of the Idea Hub. And I think Chris has also been both in New Brunswick and in Nova Scotia, not just a strong supporter, but a player in entrepreneurship, helping startup companies in many sectors. And I know he's still doing that and still incredibly active and, you know, part of the larger ecosystem here in Atlantic Canada. So we're thrilled to have Chris with us to wrap this up. And Chris,